Hello, and welcome back to the Sable International Citizenship Podcast. For those who are new here, my name is Shannon, and I'm here with Michelle Patel, our Citizenship and Immigration Director. British citizenship is a fascinating topic. There are all kinds of common and uncommon roots, and today we will be talking about adoption and British nationality. Michelle, it's so good to see you.
It's good to be back. It's been a while, hasn't it? As as
Yeah, it
as
really
per last
has.
time. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you get this question a lot or if this is one of the more uncommon roots. Can you maybe tell us if the UK draws a distinction between biological and adopted children in terms of British nationality? And if so, what does that mean for adopted children applying for British citizenship?
Um, Great question. I do get that quite a lot. And in the recent years, as I've been sort of being, touring South Africa and some other places in the world, I've noticed it's on the rise. And it's such a nice part of my work where I get to work with such families. But the simple answer is yes, the UK does draw a distinction, unfortunately, between adopted children and, if you want to call it, biological children of British citizens. And that's mainly in the wording of the British Nationality Acts. So a lot of people who've come across this British Nationality Acts will realize that where it mentions parents or children, usually it doesn't include adopted parents or adopted children for that reason. Now, what that does mean is, simply put, you as a biological child will have access to your dad or mom's British nationality. But if your dad or mom was even born in the UK but adopted you, you're not British automatically. There are exceptions to that rule, but that's generally the case.
Okay, so if I have British citizenship, would I be able to pass it on to my stepchildren if I adopt them in South Africa?
Yes and no, really. And I say yes because there is a part of British nationality law that does give automatic acquisition of British citizenship at the time of the adoption, only because South Africa is one of the recognized countries under an agreement that has been reached at the UN level between different countries and their adoption practices. So South Africa is a member and has admitted into that convention. However, for that to work, you would have to be British otherwise than by descent. So that's a specific subcategorization of British citizenship. And you would have to be what they call habitually resident in the UK at the time of the adoption. So you can imagine if you're habitually resident in the UK at the time of the adoption, even if the adoption had happened in SA, it is unlikely that it would lead to full British citizenship immediately at the time of the adoption, unless you can prove your residence in the UK and the fact that you've only gone to South Africa just for the adoption itself, but you actually are a resident in the UK. Now, if you can prove that, then of course you can actually, your child, your adoptive child, would be able to take on your British citizenship. But in my experience, that is quite rare, and I've actually never come across it myself.
Okay, and when applying for British citizenship for adopted children, is there a cutoff in terms of age?
Absolutely. So if you were just to go back to my earlier example, if there's no automatic where your adopted child can pick up your British citizenship, because yes, you've adopted the child in a recognized member nation whose adoption practices are seen as akin to the UK, for example, but you're not habitually resident or you can't prove so at the time of the adoption. In that case, a remedy to that would be to apply for the child to be registered as a British citizen at the discretion of the Home Office, a specific part of the UK nationality law that exists to give a remedy in what is quite an unfair situation. Because, of course, if this was your biological child, you would just be applying for a British passport, even if they were born abroad, right? So, if you have to register the child as a British citizen, then the cutoff is 18 years. So, you want to get that application in before the child reaches their 18th birthday.
Okay, and what if you just missed the deadline? Is there perhaps some sort of remedy for this?
Unfortunately, much against how I feel about it, the UK at the moment don't have a remedy for an adult who is adopted by, say, someone born in the UK. For example, let's say his father was born in the UK and now he's 22 years old and approaches us. I actually don't have an immediate remedy that I could put into place to get that child or that applicant now British citizenship. And I say I don't agree with that view because that's the Home Office's view, because there is a new section in the law as a lot of our listeners may have heard, Shannon, um, called Section 4L of the current British Nationality Act 1981. And it does provide a provision in the law that allows the applicant to argue, even as an adult, that they should be registered at the discretion of the Home Office. So much like the under 18 one, there's an over 18 version of that same or similar type of law. Unfortunately, the current thinking of the Home Office or the current sort of policy of the Home Office seems, oh, we're not going to exercise discretion to register such children just because their parents did not take the opportunity to register them before their 18th birthday. That's not something that we need to provide a remedy to. They should have done it when it was available. So they don't think that they don't think it's unfair that that child has missed the 18th birthday. Obviously, you can tell by the tone of my voice, I don't really agree. And I do think such adults should be registered. And we are in the process of trying to see if we can amend their way of thinking or if we can find a agreement with them that would allow such a claim.
Yeah, and are adopted children able to get immigration visas for the UK if citizenship is not possible?
Hmm. Absolutely. Actually, that's a great question because, of course, in the same example I gave earlier, a 22-year-old approaches us. His adopted dad was born in the UK. He can't get citizenship as per the current thinking of the Home Office. I will be saying to him, "Why don't you come into the UK?" If indeed that's his intention to settle in the UK, he could, through his adoptive paternal or maternal line, get a UK ancestry visa. So, in other words, yes, he could get limited leave to enter and remain in the UK through the adoptive line. Now, for example, even if it was someone under 18 and for whatever reason we can't register the child as a British citizen through the adoptive parent or parents, they can still enter the UK as dependents on either parent's immigration visas. So, in example, you could have a British citizen based in South Africa who adopts a child there. His wife is South African with no UK connections. They want to come to the UK. They may not have time to explore the British nationality options from abroad. They could just come into the UK with the wife getting a marriage visa because she married to a British citizen, and the child being admitted as a dependent, even though the child is the adoptive child. So they, weirdly enough, Shannon, the immigration law is much more giving to adoptive children than the British nationality law.
Interesting. So I know you have been working on multiple cases throughout your career. You must have so many memorable cases. Could you maybe give us some insight on some of your more memorable cases specifically for adoption and why these cases stood out to you?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, I've got quite a few favorites. I guess I'll just I guess the most recent one has really stuck in my memory. Um, and the most recent one that's been sort of in the back of my head as I've been thinking about today's podcast as well as is really stuck out to me because of the condition of that child. And reading that social worker's report really stood out to me on why I do what I do and why I love what I do. Because this child was found abandoned in a hut, taken care of by the granddad, covered in rat bites. He was just left there during the day with a bottle of milk while the granddad went to earn the day's living, and would have been a couple of years old, if that. And yeah, the social worker found this child with covered with rat bites, so even the rats were getting to this child. And the couple that adopted eventually ended up adopting this child had to fight this process for 7 years to get the adoption done. So for 7 years, they were taking care of this child in any way they could um, until they had to go through the procedures in South Africa to make sure they can adopt this child. I mean, that kind of motivated me to get it done for them. And they didn't. The bad luck didn't stop there. The fact that it took 7 years, um, and I might add that both the parents were British citizens, um, and they were born in the UK. But the bad luck didn't end there because then they also had a claim made by the paternal side of the family back for the child, so they had to fight that. Then eventually they got their way into the UK, but the wrong stamp was issued by the UK government on the child. Would you believe? So even though the child came into the UK eventually after being adopted, the long leave to enter endorsement was put onto the child. In fact, it shouldn't have been given leave to enter, should have been given indefinite leave to enter because what adoptive parent are British citizens. So there was no leave to enter that should have been issued. So they got in touch with us thinking they have this indefinite leave to remain or enter for their child, but they didn't. It was the wrong endorsement. So we had to act quickly, get the right endorsement put in, and then we managed to secure British citizenship for the child. And I remember that day quite well, where the citizenship certificate eventually came through, and yeah, there were tears, there was a lot of sort of happy tears, of course, on both sides, and I guess for them this was now a 10-year ordeal that had come to an end. So it was a really big deal. So yeah, that's one of my. I think that's one that will stick in my memory for quite a long time.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Do you have like any advice for British citizens who would like to or already embarking on adopting children in South Africa?
Yeah, I yes, actually, there is a few key things I would say to anyone listening to this podcast, watching this video, that if you are someone that is embarking or in the process of adopting a child anywhere in the world and you're a British citizen, please ensure that you have sought advice from an advisor, an immigration or nationality expert like ourselves here, on exactly what documents that you need to be ready with at the time of the application, because a lot of people will go abroad from the UK, or are abroad as British citizens adopting children from these places like South Africa or Zimbabwe, but not all of these places um, are recognized as good for adoptive practices for the UK. In other words, they're not recognized member nations under the Hague Convention. And if that is the case, then it would be a really hard to register the child as a British citizen, because the UK at the moment will only register children who are adopted in countries that are recognized under the Hague Convention for Adoption of Children, that the UK is a member nation of. So if you're thinking of adopting, where you're going to be adopting is going to be quite crucial to whether the child gets your British citizenship. So that's number one. Number two, if you do find the right place to adopt and you're about to embark on that process there, then you want to get in touch with us before you go there, if you're going from the UK there, so that we can prove you're habitually resident in the UK and what steps you're going to take to maintain that. So we can come up with a plan. But if you're not living in the UK and you live abroad and you adopt your children there, and it's the right place to adopt for the purposes of British nationality, and you confirm that, then you also want to get in touch, because there are certain really important documents that we need to you need to supply to us at the time of the application, that you can't then, when you approach us, go back and get. Usually those files are then sealed sometimes because of closed adoptions, etc., etc. And the third thing I want to say is watch out for the 18th birthday, of course. So if you're someone that has adopted and you are a British citizen and your child's 18th birthday is being reached, you want to get in touch with us. And speaking of getting in touch with us, Shannon, I should also add that to anyone listening that is based in South Africa, that myself and my team are going to be out there on the ground, seeing people one to one physically in and around Cape Town, Johannesburg, and places towards the end of October, start of November. So if you do want to come down and have a free one-to-one chat with myself and the team, and because you've heard something in this video that could affect you or your children or future adoptive children, then please look out on our website and look for the dates of where and when we're going to be there. But it's towards the end of October.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for your time and thank you
Pleasure.
for everyone who tuned in today. In the next episode, we'll be talking about surrogacy and British citizenship. See you all then. Bye.
See you then. Bye.